You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
Hello, Systematic Geekology Squad. Welcome to the Summer Drive-In Finale. That's right, friends. We've made it all the way to the 2020s. And yeah, sure, the 2020s, they've been something. And it's only 2024. We got a ways to go to get through this decade, y'all. And so I have with me someone who will help me through this decade, who've helped me in the past, who helps me now, who will help me in the future, someone who I've always wanted to be a part of his squad. That is Kevin Schaeffer. Kevin, how are you doing?
Well, you are welcome on my squad anytime. I think we would do a great Task Force X. I don't know if we want to do a Black Ops group, but we would do some kind of squad. But I am doing great. I love this movie. I cannot wait to talk about it.
Yeah, it depends if I'm on the first team or the second team. I don't know. Yeah, so
I don't know if we would want to be on the first. We might have a very unhappy ending there.
That's right. Quick ending. Quick ending. Yeah, Kevin. So let's go way back. Let's go way back to 2021. I was much younger then. I was still in my 40s, 48 to be exact. And in 2021, we had this kind of a emerging new reality of the world. And so you and I go to the drive-in and we go and see Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad of 2016 of Will Smith and Jared Leto. No, we're going to 2021 James Gunn version, y'all. And as we talk about the Suicide Squad, let me just say that we don't take the word suicide lightly. We know that word can be triggering for folks. And I have some friends of mine who won't even go see a movie like this or engage in a movie like this because it has the word suicide in it. So if you need help, if you're wrestling with those things and we just want to say you're not alone. You can always reach out to us for help. We're there for you. But this movie on so many levels embodies so much of the 2020s and where we are in the state of the world, where we are in the state of comic book movies. And so, yeah, we go see this movie at the drive-in. We may still be quarantining. We may still have a mask on at this point in 2021. Kevin, we leave this movie, and what are the first words out of your mouth?
Pure cinema. But I want to say real quick that the difference, you mentioned the difference between the 2016 Suicide Squad and then this one. The only other example where I can think of where the article is so important, because this movie is called The Suicide Squad, is when people talk about the movie Room with Brie Larson, and then The Room, which is the Citizen Kane of bad movies. Like, there is a huge distinction there between Suicide Squad and The Suicide Squad. Whereas we did the last drive-in with Flash Gordon, that was a movie where I was not alive when it came out. And whereas this one I did get to see in theaters, and it was at a really important time where, like you said, we were coming out of the hell of 2020 and in isolation, and I could not wait to get back to the movies. And I'd already been going back for a bit now, but now it's at this point when this one came out. It was still a weird time. It was one of those that was released in theaters and on Max simultaneously. Right. But I had to go to the theater for it, and I'm so glad I did. I love this movie. I think it is just expert filmmaking across the board. It's one of James Gunn's best. It made me so excited for him to continue doing future DC movies, and it just evokes so many aspects of classic westerns, of the comic movies I really like. It's a grittier take than what he was able to do previously with Guardians of the Galaxy, but it still retained those quirky sensibilities and had a very obscure group of characters that people had never heard of. And he made them, I believe, iconic. And I know this is an audio only one, but I have the action figure set from the McFarlane Toys line from this movie that has King Shark, Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, and Polka Dot Man. So if I have a T-shirt too. So if I could, I'm going to be gushing a lot about this movie, but suffice it to say, it's a 10 out of 10 for me, and one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. I know that's a high bar to set, but I really love this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. As we're leaving and kind of leaving this movie in the car and we're sharing our initial thoughts, I know I'm immediately pulling up the soundtrack because dang, James Gunn can put together a soundtrack. He is a magician when it comes to linking super cool music with the actual storyline. And even if you listen to like the song titles and what is being sung about in the songs themselves, it applies to what you're watching on screen. So the way he's able to kind of mash them together and jive them up and get them in rhythm with each other is absolutely masterful. And James Gunn's a magician in the sense that he can, like you said, take C and D list comic book superheroes that a lot of people don't even know exist and make them likable, make you care for them, make you just pay attention to what's happening on the screen and the drama that's going in front of you. So yeah, I'm leaving it just going, James Gunn's a master. And so before we get into, there was a lot of drama around James Gunn himself making this movie and his time with Marvel and doing the Guardians and back and forth. And we'll get into that just a little bit. But Kevin, Suicide Squad have been around a while when it comes to the comics. They've been around a long time. I don't know their first debut, but we can look that up. But it's like back in the 80s or 70s or whatever. This kind of Black Ops, Task Force X villains turned into heroes because of being manipulated. There's a whole commentary on how we treat prisoners as well. But in terms of the plot of this particular movie and the gist and the flow, how would you sum it up in a paragraph or so?
So we open the movie with an initial team coordinated by Amanda Waller that is sent to the island of Corto Maltese for some kind of mission. And right off the bat, in a really dark joke, that entire team is killed off, save for Rick Flag and then Harley Quinn, because one of the members sold them out to the Corto Maltese army, but he himself is killed too. And then Savant, who, of course, played by Michael Rooker because it's a James Gunn movie, he tries to escape, and Amanda Waller has him killed for mutiny. So then we transition to what is actually the main team of this movie. We have Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Polka Dot Man, Ratcatcher 2, and King Shark. And we learn early on that they are assembled for a mission to investigate Project Jotunheim, which is an extraterrestrial long-running experiment that, if fallen into the wrong hands, could be very dangerous. And since there was a recent military coup in Corto Maltese, Waller wants this team to prevent Jotunheim from getting into the new military leader's hands. And their only contact is the Thinker, which is a classic villain played by Peter Capaldi. So they go on this mission, and a lot of things happen, and they end up accidentally killing a bunch of rebel mercenaries, thinking that they're villains, and that's how they reunite with Rick Flag. Meanwhile, Harley is being held captive by the Corto Maltese military. She has what seems like a brief romance with the military leader, and then kills him right on the spot. And this is also, there's so much dark humor that involves killing in this movie, but that is a great scene. And then she's held there for a while.
And the reason she kills him, she goes, I no more bad boys with red flags. I told myself from here on out that I'm not going to get into toxic relationships anymore. Because of her.
And she says, sorry, but killing children and all that was a red flag for me. So sorry, you got to go. Then she's held there for a while. The team, before they go to investigate Jotunheim, they do rescue Harley. But then as the mission unfolds, they realize that they're not there to prevent the Project Jotunheim from getting into the hands of in the wrong hands. They're there to cover up the U.S. government's dirty work, because they discover through the Thinker that the U.S. government has been actively behind this for decades. And it's this alien experiment that is going to manipulate other people and cause massive havoc. And Waller and her team really want them to cover it up and are willing to have masses of citizens killed in Corto Maltese for it to happen. So toward the third act of the movie, Peacemaker is on Waller's side because he has this motto of, he says it in the movie, where I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I have to kill to achieve it. And it creates a rift between him and the rest of the team. This is where Rick Flag Jr. is killed, and then Bloodsport and Peacemaker get to fight. Bloodsport seemingly kills Peacemaker, but of course there's a Peacemaker sequel series, so we'll get into that later. But the rest of the team now faced with this decision, while the alien experiment that is Starro the Conqueror unleashes upon Corto Maltese, they have a choice to make of, do they abandon these people and do what they're told, or do they go off and rebel against Waller? And they do choose to rebel. They defeat Starro and save the people there, but the way they avoid getting killed is, part of it is back in the headquarters. Some of the people there turn on Waller and knock her out, and then also at the end, when it's all settled, Bloodsport issues a threat to Waller, saying that if she doesn't let the rest of his team go and also protect his daughter, then he's going to release the files to the public and expose all the government secrets. So she relents, and the Suicide Squad ends up becoming heroes, not without some losses. My God, Polka Dot Man unfortunately dies, but they ride off in the sun. And then again, in a post-credit scene, it's revealed the Peacemaker survives, and that sets the stage for the sequel series.
Perfectly said. Clap, slow clap, slow clap. Very good. That's the film, and yeah, we have to say up front, this is not a kids movie. It's a rated R superhero movie. It's very bloody. It's very violent, very explicit in those kinds of ways. But in terms of the way James Gunn handles these characters and draws you into their character and what they're longing for and what they're hoping for and the redemption that they're looking for in the world, how they're being manipulated and how to get it is absolutely masterful. How James Gunn does this, and yeah, so we have to say that the big villain, is Amanda Waller, and she's that kind of dark Nick Fury / Lex Luthor kind of character that on the surface the intention seems noble. Yeah, she wants to protect the Earth. She's scared of metahumans. She's manipulating the world for the greater cause. But yet, man, she's complicated. It's hard. And then the big villain Starro was the first villain in the comics way back when that united the Justice League of America together. The first team book out there, the Justice League coming together, they went against Starro, the starfish from outer space that can send out its larva or whatever starfish it comes from its body and hop on your face and take over you with this kind of hive mind. Super scary, intimidating villain that the Justice League had to come together to kill off or ward off in the comics. But here they're using it in the Suicide Squad movie. And I do love that Bloodsport, his first appearance was in Superman. And in this particular movie, they're like, who is this guy? He's just like any marksman. He's just like the Peacemaker. He's like whatever. He's just good with guns. No, he used a kryptonite bullet to put Superman in the ER, intensive care unit. So they tie it to the greater DC universe within this kind of subplot of these villains. And yeah, the gimmick is there. The first 13 minutes, you're sucked into this one team. They get taken out 100%, and then boom, the bait and switch, you hop over to the real team. Amanda Waller knew about all this and put a second team because she didn't trust the first one. And so there's these series of subversions and plot twists and funny moments that keep you locked in, but also there's some pretty serious big worldwide threats that are there that need this. And so again, just such a good movie. I couldn't love it more. And fantastic. So
also, two things I forgot to mention earlier, so the squad does go to rescue Harley, but by the time they get there, she's already killed every one of the guards and has escaped herself. And then also you mentioned with the Superman stuff, when James Gunn was writing this early on, he actually had the idea to make Superman the antagonist early on, and then switched. I mean, I like how this version came out, but he was able to put that little nod in there that Bloodsport put him in the hospital.
And eventually, what would happen is he would get on. He's now at the helm of directing all of DC movies. We'll get to that in a minute. But you already mentioned a couple of my favorite scenes and characters and moments. But do you have a particular favorite scene or character in this movie that you love?
So favorite character is by far Polka Dot Man. I really like the whole cast, but David Dastmalchian's one of my favorite actors today, and I just really like his quirky sensibilities and his backstory of having been a brutal experiment at Star Labs by his mother, who is his mortal enemy. And I just love how they take something and they make fun of it in the where he's like, where Bloodsport is like, does he like what shoot polka dots people? Oh, he does. So great. Like, and they, but he's actually used it as like this weapon and does this amazing stuff. And I just really love the character's performance, the quirkiness. Favorite scene is when the whole team is approaching the Jotunheim building, and it's during a rainstorm. They're approaching a huge squad of armed guards. It's just so cinematic. It's so brilliant. It has this classic shot of the team emerging as rain's pouring down on them. And it's just so well executed and gets very bloody, but in a very stylistic, artful manner.
Yeah, so this is Guardians of the Galaxy rated R version. So you can kind of see, the characters that match up with the Guardians. You have King Shark, which is like the Groot of the group, but Groot of this squad, and yet he'll rip somebody in half or decapitate them and use their head as a snack, in the movie. But they're all there. Harley Quinn. Yeah, they were gonna go. They dressed her up, and she's like, "I'm a princess," but she kills everyone in there because she's like, "No, I'm not doing this again." She is who she is, but they go to save her, the princess in the castle. But she saved herself, and she's out. She's like, "Hi guys, how you doing?" And they're like, "Oh my gosh, what we're coming to do." I'll say my favorite character. I really love Peacemaker. I think. What they do with him, like just the subtle scenes of him in the room as they're getting the debriefing, and he has a notepad and pencil and he's taking notes and making sure he has everything right. Just that subtle, it is so funny to me. And that scene is like, yeah, I'm the Peacemaker. I'm gonna fight for peace for every amount of all who I am, even if it means killing men, women, and children. And the competition between him and Bloodsport, who's a better marksman or better with weapons. It's weird, it's dark, but it's also comical, and it endears him to you. And then a little bit later on, that Max series of the Peacemaker and this episodic, more of his storyline and background and who his dad is, and him working with Amanda Waller and the people, another alien threat within that show. It's a fantastic show, and I hope they do a season 2 at some point of Peacemaker. But I really liked him. And like what they did with him and the complicated nature of what he's trying to do in that. So,
and also I have to say that like John Cena has been in some terrible movies, but James Gunn knew exactly what he was doing with casting him. And it's just like a really dynamic performance on his part. I think he knew exactly that this was a character made for him, and what he does with the comedy, the physicality, it's just so poignant here, and even more so in the show.
Yep. And I do like Flag as well, like his character, and you're wondering why he's there amidst all these kind of villains and manipulated and all that. So he's got his backstory too. But it's spoilers if you haven't watched this. Like his real death is just heartbreaking, and you're like, oh man, of all the people, this guy. But yeah, they're stakes. They're
well, and also his final line, I think, provides the motivation for Peacemaker's arc, because he says, "Peacemaker, what a joke," and it's so good.
And this other character who ends up, you think is insignificant, the Ratcatcher. What's her name?
Yeah, Ratcatcher 2.
Ratcatcher 2. You think she's just, she has a pet rat. She has a device that can control rats. You're like, okay, whatever. What a D-list character. What could that do? But at the end of the day, she's one of the main characters that saved. How are you gonna defeat like a kaiju monster of a starfish walking through a city like Godzilla? Well, you have Polka Dot Man, who was made a joke of at the beginning, his powers, and then Ratcatcher using her ability to do what she needs to do. And then, the Javelin passes on his javelin to Harley Quinn. She carries that at the end, and that ends up coming into play. So they're just the way they've strung, as you've said, a brilliant put together, directed movie that every storyline and beat, every act of the movie has consequences and impact on the one before it and after it. And I couldn't ask for better. Yeah, it may not be for the faint of heart. It may not be for everyone because it's rated R, super bloody, super violent. But
sure,
man, in terms of comic book movies, it's up there and in my top 5, top 3 as well. It's fantastic. Now, Kevin, just shifting gears just a little bit, how do you think this particular movie, we talked about how The Flash embodied the early 1980s with its flashiness and special effects and sci-fi and the time capsule of how they treated women, the comedy involved. Now we have this one. We look back at this, say, 50 years from now, and how it embodies the 2020s. What comes to the surface for you? How does this movie embody comic book, not just comic book movies, but how we see the world in the 2020s?
I think in line with a lot of James Gunn's work, it speaks to all of the outcasts and the outsiders and the marginalized that are typically tossed aside, and really shines a light on them. And that essentially was well needed, as even in this one, in some ways, even more than Guardians, because I mean, Guardians, like, they are, like, some of them are not the most noble people too, and they learn to become heroes. But even more so here, these are, I mean, Bloodsport at the beginning is like, yelling, cussing out his daughter in a prison cell. And, all of them have really, have done really terrible things. And, they're the least likely to be heroes. And yet they find a way to do what's right for the rest of the world. And they see that, especially, I think it's just such a poignant moment when they're in Corto Maltese and they see Starro unleashing havoc upon everyone. And these are like the lowliest of people to the government and to Wallers, and they're perfectly fine disposing of these citizens. And that's what turns these characters into heroes and says, no, I'm not going to let this injustice happen. And I mean, I think, especially coming out of COVID and seeing, governments not do well and not be there for people, and seeing so much injustice in the world, like, for what is over the top violent comic book movie, I think it has some poignant themes that speaks to the modern age really well, while also playing on classic Western tropes and a lot of the movies that James Gunn grew up and loves, and he plays homage to those. And like you said, has a killer soundtrack. But I think thematically, there is a lot to offer, that it says a lot about the time that this movie was made in.
I like the word you use there, disposable, because I think Amanda Waller sees these prisoners, villains, criminals as disposable. So we're going to use them up for the greater good. And you may be like, yeah, okay. What else are we going to do with these like superpowered folk, villains who deserve to be punished and probably deserve to die and the death penalty or whatever, however you feel about that. But they're disposable. But yet you have this contrast between first world and third world countries and people and political leaders or a nation as disposable, as, we don't need it. We're better than them. There's a greater purpose here. They'll serve our greater purpose to make our lives easier, even if it is to save the whole earth. So I think it does embody that. When you think about, justice, restorative justice, redemptive justice, I think it has a lot to say about that. And we've kind of leveled up our superhero movies. Yeah, we have the origin stories and they're campy, and there's the PG you want to bring all kids to, but this one's super violent in a comical way. But yeah, I mean, the comic books did that too. Like the 60s, 70s, and then the 80s comics got so popular, and then the 90s came around, and man, here comes Deadpool. Here comes Young Blood or Young Sport or whatever. Yep. The Image books that were super violent, and people had pouches and weapons and guns and whatever. The 90s became that way, and then they had to kind of like the bubble burst, and they had to regroup and rethink things in the 2000s and go back to the heart of why we like comics and characters and superheroes in the first place. There's a lot of deconstruction and reconstruction and why we love these books and love these heroes, getting to the heart of who they are. And I think we're kind of at that point in the comic book movies themselves. We had the emergence of them. They've been around since Superman and Batman 89 and Spider-Man, X-Men, but then the MCU, and then we've kind of the bubbles burst a little bit, and we've kind of having to rethink what is about these movies we really like. And I think Suicide Squad helps do that, and you kind of James Gunn gets it, and that's a reason why he's going to be at the helm of the DC kind of DC universe when it comes to the movies. Kevin, share a little bit about James Gunn's history, as we shift away from the movie and think about the creator behind this. He was at Marvel. He was the hero when it comes to like Guardians of the Galaxy. He got in a little bit of hot water, and then he came back to DC and then brought him back to Marvel. Share some of that drama there.
Yeah, so this definitely can't be ignored, and it's really the reason this movie exists and plays out a lot of history here. But this was back in 2018, maybe, I want to say. Maybe a little after, I can't remember exactly, but it was after Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and James Gunn was already working on 3. And then all this stuff resurfaced that years ago, he had some really profane tweets out there that were not, they were justifiable to be angry about and to have consequences. A lot of, quote unquote jokes that involved pedophilia and, were very harmful across the border. And, these came out and people were shocked. They had been deleted, but someone had, pointed out on the internet, and now this comes to light. Not long after that, Disney fired Gunn from Marvel and from doing Guardians of the Galaxy 3. That caused a lot of uproar and controversy, and so there was this period of uncertainty of what his future would be like and really how to react. I as someone who's admired him as a filmmaker for a long time, I was really disappointed and really disgusted by a lot of the tweets, and he made some fervent apologies, but it was still very uncertain where that would go from that point on. And then DC took the opportunity to snatch him up and said, okay, we want to give you because this was also a time where DC really needed some creative fervor. They were struggling with the direction with their cinematic universe, and they needed a voice to deliver something really good. And so they offered him a Superman movie. He was the one who grew up loving John Ostrander's Suicide Squad run and pitched this movie. And that's how this got started and got greenlit. And then in the middle of all that, while he was working on this movie and at the time, Disney Marvel decided to hire him back for Guardians 3. So he ended up with more work than he started with. Yeah. So he still got to conclude the Guardians trilogy. It was delayed both because of that situation and then COVID. So it came out last year in 2023. But yes, it's quite a saga. And then now after Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, and as DC and Warner Brothers were having massive shifts, they decided to offer James Gunn and his longtime producing partner, Peter Safran, the jobs of running the entire DC cinematic universe called DC Studios. And so now he's in that position. He's writing and directing the Superman movie that will launch that, also writing an animated series and, heading up a bunch of other projects. So it's there's a lot to unpack there. And honestly, if I have to say, just give my 2 cents about like I said, there's no justification for the tweets and stuff. They were, disappointed, and he recognized that too. I do think it's a good story of redemption. Again, I don't want to get into all of this, hot topic issues like cancel culture and whatnot. And I definitely think there should be accountability for people in the industry for what they do, what they say. But I think this is an example of where he addressed it. He did not defend himself in those, and in terms of a Christian lens, I do believe in redemption. And that's not to say that monsters out there who have committed horrible things should be excused. I think that's a huge problem too. But also, there can be grace for people who do stupid things when they're younger, and so I don't know. That's just my 2 cents there.
All that's well said, and I agree. Like 2018, like in terms of cancel culture, Twitter, the Me Too movement, there are a lot of things that are happening. It's moving pretty fast, and people are trying to figure out what to do in that space. And so a lot of things came to the surface for a lot of people that they had consequences for. You know, what you say, what you do, what you tweet, what you post has consequences. But then the flip side is like, man, if I had social media when I was in my 20s and 30s, when I was in seminary, who knows what oversharing or my hot takes would have been that I would be looking back and cringing over, being, or trying to be funny. I'm sure there's jokes I've said to people out there in the world. If you're listening and younger Will said a joke that was offensive, I am sorry. Not, and so, yeah, they were reactionary and they did this. But it was one of those things where, like, yeah, we should take a closer look of how we react or overreact on some things. And so, knowing who he is as a character, as his own self, and him taking responsibility, him switching over to DC, you know, he's like, okay, I'll go move over here. He was able to go back to Guardians 3 and finish that, but in the midst of that, he's now overseeing DC, and I couldn't be more excited. They need a course correction. They needed some new blood. They needed some extra creativity, and what he's done with some of these Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, golly, I can't wait for that Superman movie and the Supergirl movie and some other things he's got going on. Let's do this. So, yeah. And there's been that, switching teams. It's a big part of our world, whether LeBron heading to the Lakers or to transfer portal from your favorite sports team to go to another college team, or Jack Kirby heading over to DC and then him leaving DC to go back to Marvel. Brian Bendis doing the same. Like you get poached, you get pulled over because they like what you do and they want some of that money or attention or energy. So that's part of the process. So in the midst of all that drama behind the scenes, we get the Suicide Squad, the 2021 version of the Suicide Squad. And then that's going to lead to, because of the popularity and how well he did it, some DC movies here in a couple of years that are I'm really looking forward to. And I'm not skeptical one bit of what's going to happen. I can't wait. And Kevin and I may even go see it together.
Let's do it.
The Alamo. We'll go to the
It's
Alamo.
like almost exactly a year away.
I know. They've been posting pics and stills and plot lines of what this new Superman movie could look like, and I couldn't be more excited, especially after my adventures with Superman and understanding kind of the heart of this character and what he is and how to do it. So, you've heard us gush all over me. It's no secret. We give this movie a 10. We love it. It's good. Go see it. If you haven't seen it already, go back and rewatch it and just listen. I challenge you, listen to the soundtrack and then pull up, Soundhound it, Shazam it, and pull up the song title and the lyrics and listen to what that song is expressing at that particular part of the movie, even the closing credit scenes. And we just all want to be loved. I
want to say I'm a big proponent of physical media, and this is one you will benefit greatly from getting the Blu-ray 4K on here because the special features on it are outstanding. I got it for Christmas that year and rewatched it and then watched all the special features that night. Oh, it goes into like the creation of King Shark and then all the effects, the writing process, everything. It's so good.
Nice. Yep, go see it, folks. And man, this has been a fun series. There'll be other series when we get closer to like Halloween and Christmas. We like doing these drive-ins and movies, these shorter episodes, talking about some movies and watching a movie together and then talk about it. That's what we do at Systematic Geekology. We love that. Now, Kevin and I have already had a discussion on what snacks we like and our go-to snacks and the Flash movie. Go listen to that episode if you don't know. But for this one, I had an extra question here for Kevin, since we've talked about snacks. I'm curious. All right, who would you want to work for the least, Amanda Waller or Lex Luthor? Who are you going with? You have to choose between the two evils.
I was wrestling with this, but I would have to say I would rather work for Lex Luthor because with Amanda Waller, she would be like, okay, if you don't kill this person over here, I'm going to slaughter your family and or have like your best friend killed. Like, I mean, there's just like no Lex Luthor. I feel like he's too egotistical and he's going to be too focused on trying to kill Superman that, I mean, you could probably survive a day with him.
Yeah.
I mean, not a good person, obviously, by any means, or stretch of the imagination, but I think I could survive if I was like an assistant for a day with Lex Luthor, I could manage that. Whereas if I'm working for Amanda Waller, I know I'm going to have to do something horrible and something bad is going to happen. People are going to die. I do not want to be put in that situation.
Yeah, I think if you work for Lex Luthor, I think you could work for him in a close relationship for a year, and he still wouldn't know your name. He'd be like, "Hey, Lex," and he like, "Who are you?" And you're like, "I've been your assistant for 2 years, and you still don't know my name." Like, he's so preoccupied with himself and other things, he would ignore you. It's probably a safer bet. But I think after watching the Peacemaker episodic show, that workroom environment looks super fun. Those people in that room are hilarious. I think I could hang with them and joke with them and go out for drinks with them and see some incredible crazy crap, and they would do bets on the side of who's going to survive or not. I think it'd be a more fun environment. So I'm even though it's more dangerous and more risky, I'd probably say Amanda Waller, just because that workroom environment, people I'm working with, they look like fun people.
What if like the task was like to kill me and like you had to have a choice?
Yeah, I would hope someone would take out Amanda with a lead pipe in the back of her head, like in the movie. That bailout, I'd find a way. I'd find a way to keep you alive, Kevin. Even if she put like an explosive in the back of your head, your robotic suit that's going to get you to where you need to go, and your special powers, I would find a way to like juice up your tech so that you could survive whatever would
I appreciate that. I do agree that it's a fun workplace. I love the team there, and they do look like they're having a great time.
Yeah, they go a little bit deeper in the TV series, so go check it out. So, folks, that's it. That's it for us. That is it for this series. Happy summer. We hope the rest of your summer goes well. We got some fun movies coming up with Wolverine and Deadpool, and this fall looks super fun. I went to go see A Quiet Place day one, and some of the trailers that were there that I had no idea were coming out later on, I was super excited about. So yeah, it's a good time for movies and streaming and TV shows. It's a good time. So thank you all. Let us know what you think about this series, about the movies you're watching, what you think about this movie. Connect with us on social media, like and subscribe, do all those things, or you will smash the bond in the back of my head if you do not like this episode. And no matter where you are, no matter what you're going through, no matter the state of the world, and the state of this world and government and politics has been crazy, I want you to remember that you are not alone, that you are loved, and that you are always a part of the Systematic Ecology Squad.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network.